to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is military affairs, and the heading is British military intelligence crossing the line? Sorry about that. Well, if you haven't heard by now, there were a number of recent sabotage attacks on the Russian infrastructure and the Russian Black Sea Fleet. And these attacks have become quite concerning because those are not, well, those are behind the lines, and the Russians consider this as sabotage act. Unfortunately, I cannot always agree with that, but since I believe they are military targets, but that's the Russian view, and they usually responded asymmetric with it. And well, they started with the attack on the Kursk, the Ukrainian bridge, and they destroyed a lot of infrastructure, especially focusing on the power grid. And then that we have until now more than 30% of the power supply lines or facilities have been destroyed. And it seems to me, since we are approaching winter, today it was announced, or yesterday it was announced, that Kiev would like to motivate or encourage people to leave the city, because if the situation increases, then there will be no electricity, no water supply, and the sewage system will basically come to a halt. Now, today I'm not going to talk about the effects. What I would like to talk about is whether the British military intelligence is involved. And information have been surfacing, which is more disturbing. And it seems to me it reveals that Britain not only is supplying military hardware and training to Ukraine, but also actively taking part in the sabotage attacks. Now, information was fairly scarce on the attack of the Nord Stream pipelines. Then more information was made available when the sabotage of the Kursk bridge has happened. And now, after the attack of Ukraine on the Russian Black Sea Fleet in the Crimean port of Sevastopol on the 29th of October, we heard that the Russian Defense Ministry made it public that the British military intelligence were involved in the attack. They also specified the location and said that British experts based in the city of Oshakov, if that's correct, in the Nikolaev region, prepared and trained the military personnel of the Ukrainian 73rd Special Center for Maritime Operation to execute that attack. Now, this information is was obtained by the Russian Defense Ministry, which also suggests that the same unit of the Royal Navy took part in the planning, supplying, and carrying out the sabotage of the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines on September the 26th. Now, this information was never made, the Russian military, intelligence services never made such information available, but after this attack, they did make it. And for me, it is quite surprised that they did make it, but it was very specific. I mean, if you listen to it, they specified the Ukrainian unit, and they also specified from where it was taking place. So I believe that the intelligence sources are quite clear and reliable. And, well, this changes the picture a little bit. How would I say? It was, I believe, if you look at how the whole Ukrainian-Russian conflict is happening, well, especially Ukraine, there's a lot of pro-Russian people and Russian themselves in Ukraine. So there should be a lot of informants available and also clandestine operators. And I believe the Russians got access to this information, where it was planned from, and by whom. And when they investigated further, they probably obtained some documents that connected the British military unit to, or maritime unit to, the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline as well. Now, for me, I consider this as a red line that's been crossed, and that NATO is now actively involved in the war with Russia. You can basically say, technically, this is now the start of the World War III. You can argue about semantics and demand proof that the Russian military intelligence really, come on. You know, sometimes I get stuck on my own narrative. You can argue about semantics and demand proof from the Russian military command, but they have never lied before, and their intelligence networks and their capability of gathering information is quite formidable, especially in Ukraine. And you can also see it when they target specific, when they destroy specific targets with precision ammunition. In order to do that, you need intelligence. And that is clearly what the Russians have. Now, whether the Russians have destroyed the location of the Royal Navy's command post, that I am not sure. There's no information available. But I will guess they would have attacked it by a missile. So that would have been a logical conclusion. But maybe they escaped the whole attack and they will survive and see what's happening. Well, as we expected, Britain has denied everything. And neither did the Ukrainians confirm that they were responsible for this attack. But then, that's a stupid question, but who else would have done it? The Japanese or whatever? No, it would have been the Ukrainians, in the same way that they attacked the Kerch Bridge. Now, also, it has been stated that the Russian military specialists retrieved the navigational modules of some of the destroyed drones, and it stated that the Canadian-made devices stored data on the vehicle's path to their target. So they could precisely follow the path that these drones have taken. And then they found out that these drones were launched from the Ukrainian Black Sea coast, not from Odessa, but from a beach not far from the port or location. Let's assume it was a beach. In any case, what they also found is that the naval drones moved within a security zone of the grain corridor before they changed course and then headed towards a Russian fleet. Now, what that actually means is that they were hiding, or not hiding, disguising, by using the grain corridor, which is supposed to be not monitored by the Russian fleet, but it's a violation of the deal with Russia to release the grain from the Odessa port. Now, naturally, the Russians were angry and it suspended the grain deal, but since then, they took them too long, and they recently restored the agreement. So basically, Ukraine can now export again the grain from Odessa, but they had to provide written guarantees to Russia. But the question always remains how valid and credible these guarantees are, since they have violated the Minsk agreement, and they have stated that they never wanted to fulfill the Minsk agreement and that they were just buying time. Well, this is one of the events that is a little bit concerning. And then we hear about that SMS message, apparently, that Liz Truss has sent to Anthony Blinken on the 1st of November. It surfaced that Liz Truss has sent a sent an unencrypted message to Anthony Blinken, and it was sent at more or less the same time where the Nord Stream pipelines explosions occurred. Now, I'm not totally sure how accurate this is, because there were two explosions in the Nord Stream pipeline, and they were not at the same time. There was a significant period, couple of hours, between the first explosion and the second explosion. So if one has to believe this message or this information, then it must have happened after the second explosion. Apparently, this message was also on Liz Truss's private phone, which was unsecured and apparently hacked by someone. Unfortunately, we will never know by whom. You can always blame the Russians, but hell, that has now become sort of custom to blame them for everything. And then social media personality Kim.com in any case made a claim. Well, he actually basically confirmed that the message was sent based on the date stamp of the servers, of the message in the servers and the explosion of the pipelines. But unfortunately, he never provided proof of that. In any case, this information was printed by the Mail on the next Sunday, and naturally they always refer to anonymous security sources. And they also claimed that the hackers obtained more or less a year's worth of Truss's highly sensitive communications with British and foreign officials, and, well, naturally, they blamed Russia, but their hackers are from Russia. But then, this Sunday, I believe it's the 6th, yesterday, the head of the Russian Foreign Intelligence Services, a guy called Sergei Narishkin, said in an interview with Russia One channel that he had indirect confirmation that the message of Liz Truss was true about the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline. Yes, he states it is indirect confirmation, well, which can mean a lot of things. It can mean also that he didn't see any documented proof, but his intelligence sources confirmed this. So we still have a unsure if this is true, and it's still a debatable point, and we will probably never know what the full story is. But what is of concern is that this information is made available, or it is known and made available, and this in itself lends some credibility to the message. And then another thing happened. There was a warning made that Britain was too deep in the conflict. Apparently, on the 3rd of November, Russia summoned the British ambassador to Moscow at the Bora Bronet over claims that the UK provided training to the Ukrainian forces that attacked the Russian Black Sea Fleet, and she had to please explain what is going on. And the Russian foreign minister presented the diplomat with a steadfast protest and warned her that London's hostile action could lead to unpredictable and dangerous consequences. Now, if the Russians didn't have any concrete evidence of that, then the question begs again, why did they summon the British diplomat? And they also stated, if acts of aggression that risk turning Britain into a direct part in the conflict continue, the British side would solely bear the responsibility for the negative consequences and the increase in tension between the two countries. So it's a clear warning, which I believe is backed by evidence, that the Russians know, but as I have shown in the last couple of months, they have a lot of patience. They do not really want to escalate the conflict to a NATO conflict. So they have been tolerating this attack or this involvement. So, but it has to stop at one point. And then the Russian Foreign Ministry also issued a statement that British personnel had been helping Ukrainian trained frogmen and underwater demolition experts in the Black Sea port of Oshakov and Odessa. Again, very specific information. Now, as expected, the British Defense Ministry denied all the allocation. But what should be important is that the Russians know about that, they were specific in their accusations, and that these actions took place in Oshakov and Odessa inside Ukraine. So it also stated that London has been presented with the evidence of its role in the attack on the Black Sea. Again, we don't know what is happening, but the Russians provided specific information, and I would believe the proof, to London to say, whoa, hey, it's time to stop now. We know about your story, your actions. We will consider that as a transgression of the red line. And you better step back and stand and watch it. And then the diplomat also claimed that Russia knew about the participation of British specialists in the training and the preparation and the execution of the plans against the Russian attacks, of the plans to attack the Russian infrastructure and the Russian Black Sea fleet. Again, very specific. And then comes another bit of information, if you want to call it like that. I don't know, do they sometimes say caveat? Okay, in any case. On the 3rd of November, the website Grey Zone published a report citing leaked documentation that the British were training Ukrainian soldiers in the art of sabotage and were creating a type of partisan army to sabotage and destroy infrastructure behind enemy lines, and especially in Crimea. Now, if you follow the link to the articles and you follow another link, then you get to the original story where there was a survey done or a presentation was drawn up for senior British intelligence officers by a specific, at the request of Chris Donnelly. Chris Donnelly. And I have made a video about this, which you can look at and so on. But that presentation handled basically the attack on the Kerch Bridge or possible methods to do it. But at the end of the day, the actual sabotage or method of sabotage of the Crimean Bridge was not featured in this presentation. But this personality is a senior British Army intelligence operative and a veteran high-ranking NATO advisor. So he's not a small guy, he's well connected. And apparently, it seems to me, again, following the links of the articles of Grey Zone, that the Grey Zone didn't divulge all the information of these leaked documents. At that stage, they only discussed the plans for the Kerch Bridge. But according to the Grey Zone, they also not only obtained the presentation, but they also obtained a lot of other documents, private memos, emails, etc., 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 which they haven't told us yet, but which now included in the latest article that they made available, or written, or published, or sorry, whatever you want to call it. They cannot, well, what they stated is that the Grey Zone could not verify that the Ukrainian attacks on the Crimea are the direct handiwork of the Donnelly team, but it sort of mirrors closely mirrors the strategies and the tactics outlined in the document. according to the documents reviewed by the Kreisel, a private UK military command company named Prevail Partners have been contracted to recruit and train the secret Ukrainian partisan fighters. So now we have a different source that there is some training being done, and the training is for, say, for sabotage. We will include frogmen and explosives and stuff like that. So it is clear that there's a unit involved, and if you look at where they are stationed, firstly, these guys had to motivate the whole story, and finally they had to convince the British military command and the Ukrainian command, and they received funding, and they were set up, and now they are active. And they are active in Odessa, by the way. And that is the location where the attack of the Black Sea Fleet was launched from, number one. And also according to the trail that the Russians said on how the explosives finally reached via the grain corridor right through Armenia and Georgia, and then across the bridge, and then poof, explosion. It also initialized in Odessa, and now it becomes part of, it must be these private contractors. And then one has to ask yourself, yes, it's a private contractor. They are supposed to work as a civil contractor for the British Army, which is can be considered as a civilian and not a commitment by the British Army. But then the Russians always also fingered specifically the British intelligence services in the attack on the Black Sea Fleet. And then, like I said, they specified where it was taking place. So sort of becomes a gray area, gray zone, gray area, sort of so what's the word for this type of thing? Not a paradox. Coincidence? No. Oh well. English is not my language, so please bear with me. So what you have is, you have this intelligence, you have the reaction from Moscow, British diplomat called in, warned, proof supplied to the British government in London, specific information on who done it and where from, documents that the Russians know about, who done it in the Nord Stream pipeline. They know about the training program. They know the route that the drones have taken, so I can trace it back to Odessa. They also maybe was an attack on the Moskova battleship or military flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, and which finally sank. So there's a lot of stuff that now sort of makes sense slowly. It seems to me it's an escalation of matters. I believe the British have crossed the red line. The Russians know that, but they haven't reacted yet. And in a very responsible manner, they have warned them, and they have shown the patience. Similar, everybody remembers when in Syria the Russians got involved, and then Turkey shot down one of the Russian airplanes. The Russians didn't retaliate and declared war against Turkey. No. They did some other stuff, punishing Turkey by a little bit, and demanded compensation, and then the pilots' families were compensated, etc. And basically it was considered as one of unfortunate events. And again, when Syria shot down the Russian transporters, when the Israeli airplanes were hiding behind it, Russia again didn't react, didn't escalate, responsible. And you can see the same is happening now. But this patience is going to come to an end. So if I was the British, I would have taken the warning now seriously and start to de-escalate and get withdrawal from Ukrainian soil and rethink on how they want to support Ukraine. So, let that be a warning. But will the British learn? I doubt it. What bothers me a little bit about all these actions is that all these sabotage actions lead to an asymmetric response from the Russians. Very similar to what the Israelis do in Palestine. Palestine blows up, shoots one missile, Israel goes and sends fighter aircraft and bombers and shoots a lot of military missiles and artillery shells in response. And that is a Western country. So let's see what's happening, and then maybe in the future we'll make another article when the British didn't listen and didn't de-escalate. And that's it. Well, that's the end of my story for today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the channel, spread the word, tell your friends. And until next time, cheers.